Incoming.
Hey everyone, welcome back to From the Bunker. Today we're here with Anna Richardson from Project Recon. Anna, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your military background?
Yeah, so I appreciate you having me on here. My name is Anna Richardson, and I did a short stint in the Army as a behavioral health specialist and a drug and alcohol counselor. I actually kind of realized just this morning when I was thinking about this that I probably, on paper, look like the person you would never want to sit next to on a plane because I've been in behavioral health, drug and alcohol counseling, and then human resources. So while the lineup doesn't sound so good. I'm very grateful that I was able to serve in those capacities. And during that time, that's where I really honed my interest in working with others, especially those that are in need, because I understand that the brain is a pretty wild and capable thing. And everybody deserves space to be able to talk about what they're going through and have that good sounding board that's non judgmental. So that's really what I took with my time. I spent all of it at Fort Gordon in Georgia, at DDMAC, Dwight David Eisenhower Army Medical Center, which was also a teaching hospital. So I benefited a lot from the different rotations that they had go through there, to include the rotation that I got to do in the Neuroscience Center doing traumatic brain injury, neuropsychological testing batteries to assess for TBIs, which was kind of my first exposure to this world. And at that time, I really did not understand how pivotal that experience would be and how kind of important my position was sitting across from these war heroes administering this battery that was pretty painful for them to complete, but I didn't quite grasp that. And now I do. And I really fall back on that experience to inform how I work with people today.
So how'd that work? You sat down with vets who came back from overseas or what'd that look like?
Yep. So we would schedule these. There was um, a medical provider, and I worked under his license. So I was able to administer the test, but I couldn't interpret them. So I could administer them and score them. So I would sit down with these individuals who had suffered traumatic brain injuries and conduct 4 to 6 hours straight of neuropsychological testing. And it's basically just, if we're looking at it from a different level, trying to poke holes in what skills somebody previously had and identify, if we can poke those holes, is it because of a traumatic brain injury? And so I'm asking these individuals who could do anything at the drop of a dime, to connect some lines or remember 4 words that I just said. And then, I ask them about 10 minutes later and then repeat that back to me. And something that is a simple task was no longer easy to them. And so there was a great deal of frustration in that small cubicle-like space. Um, and one of the things coming from behavioral health that was really difficult for me is you can't give any feedback because that alters, the dynamic, and it could alter the results. So it was just a good old stare down. And
That's
there were
scary.
some
Yeah.
times, yeah, there were some times where it was gripping that pencil really tight and just stare down for a few minutes. But that's what you have to do. You have to sit in that uncomfortable silence, because I wasn't allowed to encourage them or let them know you're not alone. And there's hope. If you can't do this, that's okay. We can work with that. So that was probably the most difficult part of it, was just inflicting this testing battery on these individuals for that long.
So how long did you do that for?
I did that rotation specifically for a year, and, before and after that, I ran the Army Substance Abuse Program at Fort Gordon. So, different population that I worked with there, because it's a TRADOC, so a lot of people just going through training, were most of the individuals that I was working with at the substance abuse program. And then in the hospital with the traumatic brain injury, those were individuals who had deployed and had a career of IED exposure, blast exposure, um, and so different populations, which was also helpful to grow and experience how to work with individuals throughout their career, whether it's in the beginning, in the middle, or toward the end, which is what I did as a civilian in behavioral health.
So I know how long ago was that rotation? I'm curious.
Ooh, gosh. So that was 2000 2008 to 2009 was
Okay,
when
yeah.
I was there, and then the final year I was a portion of that was when I went, TDY over to Fort Campbell, and they had brought in a number of individuals from other installations who worked at the substance abuse program to kinda fix up what they were offering there. So that was the life-changing piece, was going to Fort Campbell, working with a different population, and of course, that's where I met my now husband, who was a Green Beret.
I'm curious because my first deployment was in 2015, and like you know, even at that point, TBIs were kind of an afterthought for the military as a whole, and like even the testing was like there was almost no pre-testing, like baseline testing, and when you came home, I definitely on my first deployment there was no post test at all. They just like, hey man, you look like you can walk straight, so you're fine. Like, good luck. And it's been like changing over the last, I would say, 10 years. Where like now they do baseline, they do post tests. Everyone's actually like, hey man, like if you're in combat arms for any period of time, you're probably gonna have a TBI. Like in all the different things, like if you're firing weapons on a daily basis, if you're deployed overseas where you're getting rocketed, if you're laying next to a generator for a year, where it's like rumbling the whole tent, yeah, you're probably gonna end up with like some type of brain injury. So
Yes,
it's, I mean,
it's
it's good to see it's finally getting like the light that it deserves, but
yeah, that's why I say I find it so incredible that back then, if you will, that I got to be a part of what we can now see was pretty groundbreaking for what they were doing, because they created that whole offering on the certain floor of the hospital, and that's what it was for, where people to go through testing, get support. We had our floor for behavioral health, and then I got to go down one level and spend a year there. And while it might sound not that interesting to block out an entire day every day for a year for 4 to 6 hour timeframes of conducting testing batteries, it was incredibly interesting, and like I mentioned, very moving for me because I'm sitting across from these individuals just pissing them off, essentially, and making them feel bad, and that was going against everything I had ever done thus far. It's like, "No, no, no, I
please
want
don't
you to
kill
know
me with
you're
that
okay,
pencil.
like, I wanna be your friend, I wanna help you," but, that was the element that had to happen so that they could explore getting that diagnosis, because just like you mentioned, there's a huge focus for the longest time, and rightfully so, on post traumatic stress. But that huge focus kind of pushed out the opportunity to look at other things that could be happening simultaneously. I'm a big fan of the Venn diagrams. So, you got your PTS, you have your TBI, and then, of course, you have your operator syndrome as well. And so, all those overlapping elements, asking the questions and torturing somebody for 4 to 6 hours with testing battery was necessary. And I'm very grateful that I had that opportunity, because it was a big deal that I was allowed to do that.
Yeah, and especially back then, it was like completely, I don't want to say overlooked, but you know what I mean. Like, it
Absolutely.
just wasn't how it is today. And I
Right. It's
remember,
getting the attention it deserves now,
yeah,
along with everything else that it's still getting the attention that those things deserve.
and it was still at that time, and we're still, a lot of the military is kind of like this, where they're like, you're weak if you, show symptoms of a TBI or PTSD. And I remember like even in 2019, I was in Afghanistan and this 5,000 pound VBID went off and it threw this dude off a tower. Like he fell like 20 feet, like off a tower. And like he was unconscious for like the entire gunfight, like hours. And they found him later and he was just weird, man. For the like they got him out of there because he like clearly had a TBI, but like he was not the same dude. And I was just like, man, that guy's weird. And like he left, and then like a year later, I'm like, I think that dude just has brain rot pretty good. Like maybe he wasn't that weird. He was just like in a lot of pain and just cooked his head a little bit.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting how we can look at the same individual, but in a different light once we get a bit more information, or
Yeah.
kind of once you're out of it for a few years and then you reflect back and go, now he might have been weird. We can't take that from him. He might have been
Yeah,
a little
yeah, he
weird
might have been a
too.
weird guy.
Yeah, might have been a weird guy. I fancy myself to be a bit of a weirdo sometimes, but there's those aspects where, like they say, you never know what somebody's going through when you run into them on the street or when you serve side by side. Sometimes you still don't fully understand what they're going through, especially, and it's a perfect kind of segue, it's invisible. You can't see when you watch somebody and maybe they walk a little weird. Well, I tore my ACL. Okay, I understand that. I can see it. I can see the bandages. I can see your crutches. I understand why you're like that. But if you're performing differently or acting outside of your norm, but I can't see why, probably a weirdo.
Yeah.
So that's the element of being able to really raise awareness of just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. And that
Yeah.
person might also think that they're a weirdo and might not enjoy that factor.
Yeah, I remember talking to him, a couple days later, he's waiting on a medical flight out of there, and he came up to the gate, and I was on security, and he was talking to me, and I was like, "Were you that guy that got thrown off the tower?" And he's like, "Yeah." He's like, I'm going home. I have a TBI." I was like, "Okay." And they just stood there and stared at me, and I was like, "Can I help you?"
Yeah.
And
I
he's
think
like,
that's
"No."
one of the yeah, that's one of the elements of it is the brain is a powerful, powerful thing, and it dictates everything we do, and when we don't have full control of it, he probably didn't wanna stand there, but that's brain tells him to do, and so that's the thing is, we're gonna be here until my brain tells me I can step away or you leave first.
Yeah. "Hey, kid, if you're watching this, come on the show.
Yeah,
Give me up. I don't remember your name, but come on."
there's space for you.
Yeah. So how'd you get hooked up with, Travis and Project Recon?
So I've, like I mentioned, my husband was a Green Beret, and right when I got out, I went back to school, which was probably, again, one of those things I didn't really appreciate until I did it as an adult. So, non traditional student, back at school, really appreciating what I'm learning. That's when I started. I was able to kind of volunteer my time as a behavioral health, like co-facilitating some group meetings, part of the student veteran group there. And then I really enjoyed volunteering. And so there was another SF specific nonprofit that I involved myself with, and I volunteered and I loved it. Just 24/7 type of support there. And Travis was actually one of the ambassadors, one of the retired Green Beret ambassadors for the same organization. And so they would send him as the speaker for all of the events. And I planned, along with the chapter of other spouse volunteers that I was a part of, we loved doing events and they kept sending Travis. So we kept kind of overlapping in the time. And then we ended up alongside one of the other active duty spouses at the time doing an event together. And so that's when we really started realizing we work pretty all right together. We are not the same, but that's probably where it works. We have very different personality types, but we work really well together in terms of executing what we intend to. And then we both ended up working together at that same nonprofit that we volunteered for. And I knew that my time had come to kinda roll into something new, and he had an offer of something new, and that was Project Recon, and when he told me that it was as, the leader, as the president and CEO, it was pretty scary to me, because I always say that I like to be a worker bee, but then in reality, I don't. I don't like to follow the directions of others unless I think they're great, then I'll do that, but I sat and I thought about it and I thought, this is going to be really good. And I knew that Travis doesn't fail. And so that really made me feel comfortable to take that step and know that I'm not doing it alone. He doesn't fail. He wouldn't let me down. And so that made me feel more comfortable. And he trusted that the team that I wanted to build, which was one additional person at this time, he supported my decision in that. And so uh, again, understanding the impact that a brain injury has and seeing it. My most recent peer group is SF spouses, soft spouses, and I see time and time again women spouses asking for support, saying, "My spouse, my soft warrior." told me today he doesn't wanna be with me. I've known him since he's 18, and now he's leaving our family, he's leaving us, he doesn't wanna do anything, he doesn't want help, and that's not acceptable to me. And I believe that part of that is because the brain has been injured, and the brain sees that spouse as the enemy. The brain sees that soft warrior as the enemy, and we have to neutralize that enemy. So I gotta get rid of my spouse and my family, and I might have to get rid of myself. And that's where Project Recon is offering that potential, what we believe is a potential solution to that brain injury. And so hopefully we can save the warrior, restore the family, and have these help our community flourish. And I mean that in the general population community sense and the soft community.
Yeah, I think that's where our two organizations kind of collide. Is you guys are focused on the brain and fixing, kind of like the chemical or physical um, TBI issues that come out of combat, and we're kind of trying to build a community that helps like the human being get a connection that they would have overseas that they generally don't get at home. And I think those two things together is extremely important. Like we believe veteran isolation is the number one factor for suicide. And I think that if we can fix both these things together, it can actually help this community. And I think that's what Travis and I talk about, on our show. But I think together we could definitely make a change in veteran lives, soft, anything. But
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like you said, the isolation aspect, uh, I see them going exactly together, just like you mentioned. Isolation breeds harmful internal messages. An injured brain cannot combat that. Can't tell you today was hard, but I bet tomorrow might be different.
and it's
Or,
it's tough, especially
yeah,
like when you come home. Like I moved to a small town in Michigan, after my third deployment, and I didn't have anyone to talk to that understood anything about anything, right? So like I felt like I just couldn't talk to anybody because they would look at me like I'm crazy, or they would look at me like, there's something wrong with me or didn't want to be around me or whatever. So I mean that's where kind of Bunker Bros became closer to home, and like an actual mission statement for me is like, I want to have a community everywhere I go, so let's build one. So here's kind of the intent. So, now, it's tough to like pick out that community at a bar. You can see the tattoos, but now everyone
yeah,
has tattoos. You can see the scars, but you can't see like that the combat trauma. So like, we need a better way than just like me yelling at a bar, which is how I made my only friend down here.
yeah.
Like he had tattoos and he was tall, and I was like, "Hey, were you in the military?" He had a Rakatan tattoo, and I was like, "Dude,
Yeah, I
you and I."
find that, the I usually identify a first group Green Beret because they have the entire forest. It's beautiful work, but that's when you know it's like, "That's a sweet forest you have on your forearm. Were you with first group? Did you spend a lot of time in Washington State?" Um, but it is, and then on the other side, everybody does have tattoos. I take my kids to the park, and it's every parent of our generation is just tatted up, so it's not as easy, but, it is so important, and it is important for those of us, and also what really inspired me and made me feel comfortable about working with Travis is that he has always been a proponent for reaching back into the community for those that are still battling, for those that are still serving. And I say for those of us who can, we should, and I can, so I will. Um, I spent my husband's entire SF career, we were married, and we survived that. And so that doesn't mean I get a pat on the back and I go about my life as what I refer to myself sometimes as Ohio Anna now. But um, it's our job to make sure that if I see my peer group struggling with something and they're not complaining, my husband's a dick or anything like that, they're saying, what do I do? I love this
Yeah,
person.
something's wrong. Yeah.
Yes, I love this person. Who can help? Because in a way, we know we can't. So who can? Who do we reach out to? And so we want to be one of those elements to say, you can reach out to me and you can talk to me. You could talk to Travis if you prefer to speak to somebody who has that service behind them. There is no, there's no wall here. I don't I don't care. If you don't feel that I'm qualified or that I know what I'm doing, that is totally fine because my end goal is that you get help or that you at least have the conversation. That you walk away feeling like I don't feel mortified that I just shared that with somebody. I thank everybody that I talk to for trusting me with their personal information, and I take it as my duty to protect that information and make sure that they walk away knowing that they're not exposed and they're not judged.
Yeah. So, President, CEO, Project Recon, what is your primary focus with the project?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. Perfect question. So, 2026, our goal is to put 20 to 30 soft operators through a treatment protocol utilizing stem cell therapy to address traumatic brain injury and the lasting impact. So, that's the main focus. Yes, we have the traumatic brain injury, but we have to pay very close attention to the symptoms that they're expressing, right? That most likely in the past were attributed to mental health concerns only, and seeing how that root cause might in fact be a traumatic brain injury. And when you have that traumatic brain injury, what we're battling with the stem cell therapy is neuroinflammation. So the stem cells can go in, and a lot of people have heard of stem cell therapy, most notably for direct injection. So musculoskeletal issues. So my shoulder's jacked up, and they'll do a direct injection there, or the knees. That's not our focus at this time. Our focus is for that traumatic brain injury. So you have an IV or intranasal application administration, and we want to do everything as if it is a clinical study because the end game is to garner the attention of the VA and DOD and show them this is something that has healing potential. We have testimonials galore, but we need metrics. So that's our job. A lot of people aren't doing that. You can get stem cells. People get them out of country. You can get them in the United States as well. But what we want to do is remove that little asterisk that says it's not FDA approved. And in order to do that, we have to do a clinical trial. And so 20 to 30 soft operators at that phase one level to demonstrate that it's safe and to demonstrate what the appropriate dosage is. And that's with ethically harvested, minimally manipulated cord blood stem cells. And that's from a donor. So these are mothers who have given birth and donated their cord blood. And within that, you have the umbilical cord stem cells. And that's what we utilize. And so
Yeah,
to
it's
get
not.
those 20 to 30 operators through there, yep.
Yeah, it's not South Park with Christopher Reeves like cracking fetuses open and like
That is
he's telling
correct.
you.
But you know what? That's one of my favorite questions when people
Yeah,
ask because if you ask me, if you say stem cell and then say, "What do you know about it?" That's absolutely an element of it, and I
yeah,
love when people ask a question because then I can answer it, and then if it's something that pokes a hole that I didn't anticipate, I'm gonna take it to the drawing board and figure out what we need to change. But I usually I just give that answer before anybody ever asks because I know people have the moral compass, right? A spiritual compass. And so we don't want to lose those individuals just because that answer isn't readily available to them.
yeah. Well, too many people watch South Park.
That's right.
They just assume, you know.
Well, and South Park is so spot on. South Park and The Simpsons, right? They got everything down locked. They know what's happening.
No,
So
it's yeah, they're the Illuminati. I get it.
yeah.
All right, so 2026, 20 to 30 soft dudes in clinical trials. So is this going to be like a volunteer basis? Are you going to go out and search for guys that already are TBI victims, or do you have them?
So guys and gals, which is exciting for the soft population. But so currently we have on our website, you can fill out one of the contact us forms. And then I speak with each person that fills that out. We have a conversation, very short intake form. And I let everybody know ahead of time that right now what we're doing is working to secure the funding. So quarter one, huge focus on continuing to fundraise. So, in these conversations I'm having with people, I tell them about what we're doing, what the purpose of what we're doing is, and that we are focused on fundraising. If they feel comfortable then filling out the intake, knowing that nothing's happening tomorrow, I send them the intake form. It's very simple, little bit of service information, and then I just want to know how their traumatic brain injury is impacting them. one of my favorite things that I'm able to ask people is whether or not they have a diagnosed TBI, and if they're veterans, if it's on their VA disability. Because I have come across a couple that don't have the diagnosis. And that's, mind-blowing, right? No pun intended. They don't have the diagnosis or they do and it's not on their VA claims. So, in my previous work experience, I have a great understanding of the VA claims process, and I know who to send these individuals to, but we can also have those informed conversations. So they fill out, we have a little one-on-one conversation. I'll send them the intake form, and then I just keep my contact list. So for now, I have the individuals I'm going to touch base with as we move forward in the timeline. And then we will absolutely be doing promotion to say, if you're interested through all of our communication channels to get people to apply, if you will, or submit their information. And then our medical team will make that determination. I do not make that determination. That is not my lane. My lane is to raise awareness, inform, and then raise that money to cover down when the time comes. But we have a medical team that will work with those individuals and assess their readiness for the treatment.
So let's say it works out 2026, you get your clinical trials done. What's the end goal? Are we talking stem cells and facilities across the US sponsored by the VA for veterans with TBIs? Is that the goal?
The goal is absolutely to have stem cell therapy, what I say, on the menu, as opposed to considered this holistic fringe benefit. And the end goal is military veterans, not SOF only. That's just obviously that's our starting point, not only because that's the community within which Travis served and I was a spouse, and operated as the, support and volunteer base, but also soft personnel tend to suffer more traumatic brain injuries and tend to suffer them as a result of a violent mechanism in comparison to their counterparts in the conventional services. So if we can demonstrate that it's beneficial at this level, and then the trickle down shows, well, of course I can help you because it does matter. And you have everywhere from mild to severe. So mild, moderate to severe. And we very much believe that quality of life is something that we're trying to help individuals restore, no matter the severity of their diagnosis. And also for our individuals who might be battling those mild traumatic brain injuries, but getting ready to get out. You have the knowledge, skills, and abilities to rule the world. But what if you have that traumatic brain injury and it's making you think, I'm not going to do it. I'm not even going to apply for that job. Or you take that job and then you don't perform well because you don't have the right support and resources and then you lose that job and then it goes into telling you you're not meant for this world, you're only meant for the military and you can't go back. I don't want that.
So sorry if you can hear my dog. He's upset about
That's
something. I don't
okay. I
know.
closed the door because I'm a cat lady and I got one.
I don't know what he's doing over there.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've been talking about kind of like the end state, how we're gonna end up. If you could kind of change something about the intake process for the military to make maybe the study easier, would you have any idea on how to do that?
I think that's tough. I think that when we're talking about people coming into the military and people exiting the military, we're definitely going to get better data, more openness and honesty from those who are transitioning out of service than from those that are going in. Because I believe, and maybe you included, that if I told you you could do it all over again. And I'm going to tell you every injury you're ever going to incur and that you might suffer long term cognitive effects from your service. You would still do it all over again, right?
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know that there's anything that is tremendously lacking that wouldn't change why people serve in specialty units and why people serve in the Army. I believe that they know um, what they're potentially going to experience, especially now after GWA and these our generation has experienced it now. Um, Devices, protective devices would be the only thing because if you tell somebody, but it can't be a protective device that says you've reached your limit, now you got to get off the range because then nobody's going to wear it. So it's really just a protective device that you can wear, but you still get to expose yourself to dangers. Now, there's a lot of stuff, that's coming out in terms of, the burn pits, exposure to toxic chemicals. Let's work on that, right? The things that we absolutely know are not necessary. It is not necessary to have a burn pit next to where somebody resides for a year straight. They're working on that, right? But the things in terms of, the watch that measures how much exposure you have and then, get off the range, I'm just not gonna wear it.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, so I think I know. It's a matter of so I would say this, it's a matter of allowing in different treatment modalities that the community is open to receiving, and of course, that's when they're shown to be FDA approved and safe, but to say that talk therapy is the widely utilized resource for those that are battling mental health concerns or traumatic brain injury concerns, that's a limiting factor. So we were actually able to support an active duty Green Beret, and he's got a deployment coming up this fall. That is really exciting to me because we are not here to get you out. We are not here to facilitate anything other than healing in the space that you need it most. So if that's returning to duty, continuing in your duty or transitioning out or figuring out what you're doing because you've been out for 5 to 10 years, that's where we are. And so being able to work with that active duty soft service member and knowing that he's going to deploy, but have enough time for the stem cells to do their thing and help him cognitively, perfect. So
I
letting us in, I would say, letting us in, let us do the work, let us find the money, and then when we demonstrate it, let it in.
I think if if I could go back to my enlistment, the only thing I would change is I wish I would have gotten a brain scan. Like, I wish I would have a map of my brain before and after, like an alcoholic, you know? Like,
Mhm.
I wish I had a before to know how wrinkly or smooth my brain was, and then, like, when I get out and I have to go to the VA, I could get another brain scan, and it's gonna be like, "Man, you got a smooth brain, son." Like, "Well, it used to be wrinkly. See all the
Yeah.
wrinkles?" But, like, now I don't think I've ever had a brain scan, but, like, I even before, like, before I talked to Travis, I was one of those people, like, I've been close to enough explosions, but I've never been close enough to get, like, knocked unconscious, but I've been potato. Like, I've had the migraines, I've been, like, drowsy and shitty after, like, an explosion that was too close and, like, spent the rest of the day just potatoed. But before talking to Travis, I was like, "I don't have any symptoms." And he's like, "Oh, well, it could be, like, your eyesight's degrading rapidly." I'm like, "Okay, well, that's me." And then, like, we
Yeah.
kinda kept going through stuff. I was like, "Alright, okay,
Yeah.
maybe it sounds like I might."
Yeah.
But, yeah, I wish I would've, like I think especially going combat arms, you should have a scan before. Like, that should be a MEPS thing, like, just as a baseline. I don't
I
understand why it isn't.
I used to say that, knowledge of how your body works and knowledge of resources should be like check marks for the NCOIC or whatever the counseling things. You don't have to tell me that you're going to use them, but I need you to prove that you understand that they exist and that you understand, like you mentioned, what your brain is supposed to look like, what it does look like, and what your service is going could potentially expose you to. And so, like they say, knowledge is power. The more you know with the shooting star, um, making sure that people are fully informed before they make their choices. And then when you make your choices, that's okay. It doesn't mean that you're not entitled to support because it's not your choice to actually be by an IED or on the range. That's your job. Those are workplace and environmental exposures. And then there should absolutely be treatment available to you to address the things that we know that you might be exposed to. So, understanding what is actually happening to your own body. You don't have to do anything with it right now, but you should understand. That way, when you do start feeling it, I mean, I've had my own, I'm a big anxious gal. I love anxiety. I have it, so I have to love it. But I knew for me when I would become overwhelmed, we'll say, and I'd say some things in some tones that people didn't love. I knew that I didn't like that as it was coming out of my mouth. I didn't like the way it felt, but I had to. I was like compelled to just express myself, right? And so that's how I knew this isn't me. and that's okay. I'm not gonna change tomorrow, but I know that this isn't me, and there's probably a resource out there, and it wasn't easy, and it took me a number of years to kind of admit it in front of somebody, and then admit it in front of somebody, and then let them hand me a piece of paper to actually put it on the paper. Because a couple times, like, "Never mind, I'm good. Just, just having a bad day, not a big deal." And then with my husband, when he transitioned out and I was working at the other nonprofit, there was a lot of travel for me that I'd never done before. And we have 2 kids, and there's a lot of scheduling stuff. There's a lot of issues that come with that. So I told him, and I tell people all the time, you have to live in reality with your partner. It doesn't have to be pretty, but you have to be in the same reality together, and then you can attack that reality together. But if you're living on 2 separate planes, there is there is no coming together. There is no
Yeah.
resolution. So as ugly as it gets, as painful as it can be, if we can both admit what our reality is, then we can work on it.
It's funny you say it about the anxiety because I was one of those people like didn't know that existed. Did not
Ooh.
know there was like physical afflictions that came with it. Like I thought panic attacks were part of life. I thought that was like something that just happened to everybody for like the first 5 years I had them. I was like, oh man, that's like a weird thing. I must not be breathing correctly.
Mhm.
I got to
Yeah.
remember not to randomly hold my breath or my
Yeah.
chest will get tight and I like will like sweat. But yeah, no, I have that conversation still. Like people, there's a guy, one of my coworkers. He's like 45 or 48. He's a Marine and he was in Fallujah and like the initial invasion. He the other day, he's like, "Yeah, last night I had this weird thing. I felt like someone was sitting on my chest and I couldn't breathe and I got sweaty and panicky." I was like, "Yeah, it's a panic attack." And the other guy in our office was like, "Yeah, it's a panic attack." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "Yeah, no, like that's an anxiety thing. Like it might be from like a PTSD standpoint, but yeah, that's a panic attack, dude. Like you should get it checked out." And he like didn't believe us. He's like, "I thought that was just the thing that happened." I was like, "Oh, man."
It is a thing that happens, but it is a thing that can be looked at, and that's where, again, in the space of treatment types that weren't a thing until they were stellate ganglion block. So a lot of people in the military community are getting SGB. It's an injection into the left side of your neck, and it reminds me of also why I feel so passionate about stem cell therapy, because it's a physical administration of a treatment that can produce mental health and physical health benefits, much like the stellate ganglion block. You have mental health concerns, whether it's anxiety, PTS, hypervigilance, and you can get a physical treatment that can help you with that. And when you
See, I
tell
didn't even know that.
somebody,
Never heard of that.
oh man, all right, I'll send you an email all about it. I didn't learn about it until I started working with that initial nonprofit. It was one of the first things that I heard about. And it again, I was like, "What is this?" So I had to learn all about it, and now it just kinda rolls off the tongue, whereas before it's like, "Are you crazy? What is that?" But, yeah, there's this nerve bundle, stellate ganglion nerve bundle, and it's just like a local anesthetic that you'd find at the dentist's office, and it's ultrasound guided, an injection, and you can do dual sympathetic reset is what it's called, and they do an injection there, and it basically helps you go from to just here. That way, when I'm interacting with my family members, my coworkers, my peers, my subordinates, I'm here. Okay. It's never going to
How long
take
does
you out
that
of the pain.
last?
Sorry.
How long does that last?
Well, so the longevity of it is going to be based on what you're exposed to. So when I used to facilitate people being able to access stellate ganglion blocker SGB, we'd have conversations because some individuals got out of the military and then became paramedics, and they'd be exposing themselves to trauma daily. The longevity is not going to be there if you are still exposed to excessive trauma. But there's great longevity for those who have transitioned out, and it's available on active duty as well. But that's the other thing. So going back to your question, what can be offered? Consistency. You can find different treatment types that are approved based on what installation you're at, based on what military treatment facility you're at, based on what TRICARE covers in your area. And so if we had something that was more consistent, where SGB is something that you can get at Fort Bragg and, at Fort Campbell and at Joint Base Lewis McChord as opposed to, "No, I can get that." "Oh, I can't." How do I ask for it? What's the
That's
right way
wild.
to ask for it? You know, what are the right words? What's the right code? That would be what my suggestion would be, more consistency. But yeah, stellate ganglion block, stem cells, allowing your body to heal itself and using physical administration of treatment protocol is definitely something that the soft community at least grabs onto a lot faster than I will pay for you to meet with a therapist every day for the rest of your life. No, thanks.
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, I appreciate you. I have a dog that I can talk to.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, so there's there there are so many things out there which can be too much, but that's why what you guys do is so important, getting the community together, allowing people to come on here and share those resources, and then having these nonprofits where if somebody comes to me, yes, we do stem cells, but, also you said you're retiring. How old are those kids? Are they getting ready to go to college? Let me help you find some scholarships. Yes, we do stem cells, but I bet you're in a lot of physical pain. Let me tell you about the nonprofits that cover down on some medical devices that don't use medication to treat and then hook you up with those points of contact. We're all doing the same thing. We're all just trying to connect people in the easiest way.
Yeah. So I promised, Travis I would ask something about, you tried to
No,
steal candy from Iraqi children
stop it. No, I
and they
didn't.
broke your arms.
No. That's way cooler than what happened. So I hate
That
that he
Hey, man,
told you
that's just
that.
what
I
he
wish he
said.
would have started, like, way lamer. Nope, when I was in basic training, so I joined the military, quite honestly, because, and the words came out of my mouth, I was a loser, and I needed direction in my life. I had gone down some pretty dangerous paths and made some pretty unhealthy choices for myself, and I knew I needed something different. So I joined the army. I was like same day I signed up and then I had to wait a few months to get my MOS. But um, I went into basic and always had a nice healthy fear of heights. And now I have an unhealthy fear of heights. But just one of the dumbest things too was the confidence course. So the confidence
God.
building course, okay, so confident, went into that and just the inverted wall, so silly, climbing up and you gotta kick your leg over, and then go down hands first, and I lost my grip, and so I fell. It was like 10 feet or whatever, nowhere near Travis's really cool near fatal free fall
Halo
accident.
jump. Yeah.
Yeah, so nothing like that. I didn't fight any kids. I fight kids now, but, yeah, I fell off that wall, knocked myself out, and I broke both of my wrists. So when I came to, I kinda had, like, crab claws. I'm
Oh,
5'10", so I'm pretty tall, and the next, little obstacles were all legs, like stuff you could step over, so they didn't believe me. They're like, "Just go
yeah,
ahead." So
yeah.
I'm stepping over these logs, and then the final thing is it's odd that I remember this, but it was just a meaningful day. You got the slide for life, right, where you jump off the tower, but to get up there, you have to climb a cargo net. And I said, I'm working with crab claws. And so they had this first lieutenant that was out there climb it with his elbows. So I tried to climb it with my elbows, fell through the little hole, and then they finally called me the little ambulance bus. And that's what she wrote. Went home I had bilateral wrist surgery, got some plates and screws, came back and did, basic training all over again in the winter time. So I was at Fort Leonard Wood for a year. No, it
Nice.
took me a year to get through all of the training. So, got to see beautiful Fort Leonard Wood in the winter.
Yeah,
That was
every
probably my
season.
first experience of depression as a California girl. Was,
I
was
love
early in
that.
the winter. So,
I love that.
no, the
I've seen a
Iraqi
lot of people
babies
get
are
hurt
safe
on
with me.
those. Yeah, he's like, "Make sure you ask her about how she broke her arms." And I was like, "Oh, is it, like, overseas?" He's like, "Yeah, yeah, sure."
What a liar. No, or as he would say, "What a joker." Um, no, so that's why one of my favorite photos is me in the hospital because they wrapped me it was ridiculous, from my shoulder blades to my fingertips. So Travis has all of his cool guy photos, and I have my got my BCGs, my arms both arms
Hell
wrapped
yeah.
up, and so I always say, some people do it real cool, and some people look like me.
I
But
love that.
I stuck with it, and I'm glad that I did because it gave me the opportunity to do stuff in the behavioral health and support world that I would never have been able to do as a civilian. You don't let kids just talk to people in need. And so I got to do that. It gave me a huge appreciation for the people that I was sitting across from and just solidified that it was, in fact, what I wanted to do. So, and I have a wonderful VA disability rating. Very small, don't
Yeah.
worry. Don't worry, it's very small, and I'm fine with it. Just 10% for each one.
Well, yeah, I think your story's better, don't want you out there abusing
It's
children.
just like and then I will say that I had battle buddy, so again, 5'10", she was probably 4'10", and, I couldn't open my little canteen, a little girl needs to have some to wet her whistle after she falls off a wall, so my little tiny battle buddy held my canteen up to my mouth. Luckily, there was a bee in there, stung me on my lip. It's like,
You have
this
maybe one of the most traumatic basic trainings I've ever heard
this is the
of.
day. This is the day. But now it's an incredible story that I laugh at, and, it sucked, but it also gives me a lot of appreciation and gratitude that that is the worst that happened, and that, you know, it sucked, but,
Yeah.
it's a funny story.
Yeah, I agree with you. Four-letter word does suck, I agree.
God, it's so
So
cold, it's so cold. You went from brushing your teeth and just sweating balls to just everything's frozen, and then, of course, I was afraid of falling down because everything's frozen and I'm wrapped up. I was not their favorite, needless to say.
alright, so last question we ask everybody. If you had advice to give to, like, an up-and-coming young you coming up in the military, what would that one piece of advice be?
Oh gosh, have more confidence.
The
I
confidence
don't
course
think
didn't teach you that?
no, God bless. No, I don't think that I actually found confidence in who I am and what I'm capable of until maybe 5 or so years ago, to be honest, and maybe it comes with age, and you like they say I don't know if you guys cuss on your show, but,
Yeah, you can
like,
say whatever you want.
okay, having, like, no more fucks to give, like,
Mhm.
this is who I am, and I feel good about who I am, and I can accomplish things, and I have accomplished things, and I think that I allowed myself to be hurt far more than I needed to and to be isolated far more than I needed to be. I had not a friend, maybe one, at Fort Gordon, and I didn't take advantage of living with all those people and, because I was just afraid to put myself out there, fear of the rejection aspect of it, and of course, I worked in substance abuse, so not everybody was banging down my door to be my friend, but, just confidence. I wish that I would have had it, but again, I can't change who I was, and I'm only looking at it in hindsight now, so
It's a good one. No one said that yet, and I
yeah.
100% agree with you. I was lucky and young, and I realized what confidence was, and I was like, "The worst that could happen is you die, and then it's not your problem anymore." So, that was
Yeah,
how
there
I
you
started
go.
it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
I
no,
think,
I 100% agree, yeah.
yeah, finding where you belong is probably why I was able to achieve the confidence that I have now, and I'm not cocky, so there's still elements where it's like, "Oh, like, I'll probably reflect on this and go, oh god, did I look silly? Did I sound stupid?" But maybe not, I don't know. I actually really I will say I love the aspect of podcasts and conversations because I have found people ask me questions, but they're ChatGPT generated questions that they send to me. I take my time to answer them. I send them back. They use ChatGPT or some AI to formulate it all together and produce something in writing. It's like, if you can't have a conversation about what you're passionate about and about what your mission is and about what you care about, that's really dangerous.
I don't believe in that. I don't plan any of these.
Yeah.
I always start with the same question and end with the same question, but I believe that the conversation could go where it's supposed to go. Otherwise, it's not worth having. I
Yeah.
don't. I think the first podcast we ever did, we kind of tried to plan, and I was like,
Mm,
that was fucking lame. Like
yeah.
we didn't learn anything. Nothing was fun. It was dumb. So I didn't think we'd publish it. So we like, yeah, no, I don't fucking do that. But first and last question. The rest of it's like, we'll see where this goes.
Yeah. I applaud you for having a podcast and it not ruining you. We always joke. I have one friend and we like to pretend when we're having our nightly conversation, what a good episode that was. But we would be ruined if anybody ever heard it. We'd have to really make it big because otherwise we would never have a future if what we talked about got out on the airwaves. But it's nice to have conversations and it's nice to just you say something, I have to listen to you to know what you're going to say in order to formulate my response, as opposed to knowing what you're going to ask me and then just being robotic and telling you what I prepared. So it's nice to have those conversations because that's where you see how much somebody is invested, how much somebody cares, even if they don't have the answer. That's also caring. I'm going to listen to you and I'm not going to formalize some bullshit answer because you asked me a question I don't actually have the answer to. It's okay not to know. Just means you got to go do some research.
Percent yes. All right. Well, Anna, I want to thank you for coming on. I appreciate you and
Thank you.
what you guys are doing at Project Recon. Anything we can do, let us know. We'll advertise for you guys and stuff because we love what you're doing. So,
I appreciate you very much. You guys gonna be a SHOT Show by any chance?
ooh, up in the air.
Okay.
Not as like not as like a table or whatever, but
Right.
I think we're gonna send somebody to do
Okay.
some work. You guys are gonna be there?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, well, I'll let you guys know. I'm not sure. I don't know if it'll be me. I'm not sure if I'm like the crowd pleasing one.
Okay.
That might be that might be like
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, that's why I bring Travis. Is like, all
yeah,
right.
yeah,
We
exactly.
have Earl Plumley, Medal of Honor recipient. He's gonna be there too. Uh, but yeah, Travis is the face. Like in my relationship with my husband, I tell him, "You're the beauty, I'm the brains." It's way easier to keep up my side of the bargain. So whatever we gotta do, if Travis is the face and that's what gets people there, I love it.
100%. Well, I'll let you know. I'm not sure yet.
Either way,
All
I'm
right.
sure we'll cross paths, but I appreciate this opportunity. This is my first one, so, uh, it was cool.
Well, you did great.
Alright, very good.
Incoming, incoming, incoming.